Welcome to the ChatGPT podcast. I'm your host, Jaden Schaefer. Each episode, we dive into the latest developments in the exciting field of artificial intelligence, exploring its applications and potential impacts on our daily lives. Have you ever wanted to start your own podcast? I record and publish podcasts on a platform called Spotify for Podcasters, and I absolutely love it. Essentially, you can upload from your phone or computer, and it distributes to every platform that plays podcasts. They support video podcasts, and you can make money on the platform with ads or even podcast subscriptions, something that has made my life so much easier as a podcaster. So if you're interested, I highly recommend you give it a try. You can download the Spotify for Podcast app, or go to spotify.com/podcasters to get started on your podcast today. If you've been following the podcast for a while, you'll know that over the last 6 months, I've been working on a stealth AI startup. Of the hundreds of projects I've covered, this is the one that I believe has the greatest potential. So today I'm excited to announce AI Box. AI Box is a no-code AI app building platform paired with the App Store for AI that lets you monetize your AI tools. The platform lets you build apps by linking together AI models like ChatGPT, Midjourney, and 11 Labs. Eventually will integrate with software like Gmail, Trello, and Salesforce, so you can use AI to automate every function in your organization. To get notified when we launch and be one of the first to build on the platform, you can join the waitlist at aibox.ai. The link is in the show notes. We are currently raising a seed round of funding. If you're an investor that is focused on disruptive tech, I'd love to tell you more about the platform. You can reach out to me at jaden@aibox.ai. I'll leave that email in the show notes. There is breaking news in AI today. So recently on, I believe, 4chan, the parameters and the model weights for GPT-4 were actually leaked. So this is really, really interesting. People have been making commentary. This was posted on Twitter, and subsequently it was deleted by the user, but we have Internet Archives of that original tweet, which we can break down. And then a lot of people have been making summaries of this, putting it on Reddit and sharing it. Of course, my assumption is that, OpenAI has threatened lawsuits against anyone who is, spreading this confidential information. And so that's probably why the original tweets were taken down. On my end, of course, I'm just a commentary on this topic, so I haven't seen any of the leaked data, but I'll talk about the commentary, what people are seeing. And I think this is really interesting based off of the implications we're going to see in AI from this. I think this will be interesting to see. This is kind of like the equivalent of the Coca-Cola recipe being leaked. And so I think this is really interesting. It has a lot of stuff about GPT-4 that were kind of speculative that we know a little bit more. Of course, OpenAI hasn't confirmed these, but we have a little bit more insight into how the model works. So today on the podcast, I'm going to be breaking down the GPT-4 model weights that were leaked, what we've learned from them. I'll talk about them in some technical terms at the beginning if you know a lot about training AI, that will be useful, and I'll give you the 30-second overview, and then at the same time I'll also kind of break down what this actually means. So if you are an AI expert and you kind of know what's going on, here's the 30-second overview. Essentially, GPT-4 is reported to have over 1.8 trillion parameters across 120 layers, and it utilizes a mixture of experts, which is MOE, and that's the expert model. It's trained on around 13 trillion tokens and has around 32,000 sequence length. The training cost for it is estimated to be around $63 million, and inference costs are higher compared to previous models. So other details include parallelism strategies, dataset mixtures, and speculation about its performance. That is the 30-second overview on a technical perspective. But if you are not a data scientist training AI models, here's what I think you should know. First off, the fact that it has 1.8 trillion parameters is really important because this actually passes the size of its predecessor, which is GPT-3, by over 10 times. Because they announced what was in GPT-3, they did not announce what was in GPT-4, and there's a bunch of different reasons for that. There's a little controversy around it, and so it would appear that it's 1.8 trillion, which is pretty insane. So what does that actually mean? Essentially, parameters are kind of like the building blocks of a machine learning model. They define how the model actually makes its predictions. So the more parameters could potentially mean a more sophisticated, intelligent AI, and especially when we see kind of a jump in that size. Part of GPT-4's approach includes what's called a mixture of experts, or an MOE model. And essentially, this is a method of organizing a machine learning model into smaller pieces, or experts, which essentially specialize in different parts of the data. So the strategy is a bit like having, different departments in a company. And in the recent leak, they confirmed that OpenAI was using 16 experts in this model. So, 16 experts at different areas that are all kind of helping to create these responses. One of the crucial points, I think, is the way that these experts are used, or essentially, quote unquote, routed in the model. So while many suggest intricate algorithms for choosing which experts to engage each data point, right? So essentially, you ask it a question, it has to decide which of its expert models to give that question to respond. And so some people say, they're using different complex algorithms for this. But imagine deciding, who in your company is going to handle a question. So it would appear that OpenAI opted for a bit of a simpler approach to this. So an aspect of the GPT-4 model that might seem kind of counterintuitive is that not all of its parameters are used for every task. Only about 280 billion parameters and roughly 560 trillion floating point operations per second, which is T-flops. It's essentially a measurement of the computing speed. But only about 560 trillion of those are used each time it generates a prediction, or, it's called a forward pass. So in comparison, a model without the MOE technique would have to use all 1.8 trillion parameters and around 37 trillion T-flops. So by kind of breaking this down and having 16 of these different quote unquote experts, or MOEs, they're able to really bring that down. So they're only using 280 billion parameters instead of having to use, the full 1.8 trillion for every single query. GPT-4 was trained on a massive 13 trillion tokens, where tokens, essentially can be thought of as smaller pieces of information the model learns from. So that could be a word or a character in the text. This isn't necessarily a full word. It could be half of a word. And we kind of break those down into tokens. That's just how, these AI models are making the predictions. They're not predicting what full word comes next. They're predicting what piece of a word comes next oftentimes. In any case, that's called a token, and it was trained on 13 trillion tokens. Interestingly, this count isn't based solely on unique tokens. It also includes multiple runs, or what are called quote unquote epochs. Over the same data. So the model went through 2 epochs for text-based data and 4 for code-based data. During its training, GPT-4's batch size, or the amount of data it processed at one time, ramped up gradually to a staggering 60 million tokens. So to accommodate this massive operation, OpenAI used advanced parallel processing strategies across multiple high-performance A100 GPUs, similar to dividing a large job between several very fast computers instead of having, one computer try to do it all at once. And the training run for GPT-4 was extensive, operating on 25,000 A100 GPUs for about 3 months. Now, what's interesting is we have companies like Inflection AI who are said to be in the process of acquiring 26,000 GPUs. So it would appear that they're trying to, build something similar and do something very similar to GPT-4. They'll have the manpower, they'll have the compute power once they have acquired that. And so, it's kind of interesting. While this was just recently leaked, it would appear that Inflection is shooting for the exact same amount of GPUs to build out their kind of mammoth AI model. But it was estimated that if conducted in the cloud, the total cost for this run would have been around $63 million. One thing I will say is that this MOE strategy is kind of criticized by some as it can be a little bit tricky. So these MOEs, right, those are the quote unquote experts that you're kind of handing it off to. The problem with using MOEs in an AI model is that during predictions, not every part of the model is used every time. So this can mean that some of the parts of the model remain idle while others are active, and this kind of reduces the overall efficiency. And as part of its design, GPT-4 includes a vision multi-module component, which means that it can actually process both text and visual inputs. Now, this isn't something that, a lot of we're seeing or using or being advertised on, ChatGPT, for example, But the fact is that it is capable of doing this. And this is actually really interesting. This leak just came out because someone recently posted that with ChatGPT's new their new code element that they've just added to it, people have said that it actually has facial recognition in there where it can actually recognize faces if you get an image of a face on there. So that is very, very interesting. It evidently does indeed it is, multi-modular. It does do text and images, which is really interesting. And I think that this part of the model could be used to help autonomous agents, read web pages, transcribe content from images and books. Interestingly, I think there's rumors that some of the data that GPT-4 was trained on came from platforms like Twitter, Reddit, and YouTube, which is, as well as a custom data set as college textbooks. So this wide range of data could potentially make GPT-4 versatile enough to answer questions across a really broad range of topics. So while GPT-4 is undeniably impressive and has taken us a step closer to true AI, its limitations and costs demonstrate that there's still work to be done. However, I do think that with more research and innovation, there's, no telling really where the future of AI is going to take us. And overall, I think that this is really, really interesting to kind of get a deep inside look at this model that is used by so many people. I'd be curious to see if, the competitors of OpenAI and ChatGPT are looking at this leaked data and are kind of comparing it to their models, how they're doing things, and seeing, what the standard is. Because evidently, OpenAI has raised $10 billion. They've spent a lot of money training these models, a lot of money researching the best ways to do this. And so I think that getting a kind of an inside glimpse into this, even if this data was technically leaked, is very revealing to the overall industry and how, people are approaching these large language models. So it's going to be really interesting to continue following this and seeing if, after a leak like this, OpenAI just comes out and admits some of these weights and models. We've seen similar things from Meta where some of their AI models and some of their code was also leaked. So this will be interesting to see if this continues happening in this industry going forward.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. That's the sound of switching your business to Shopify, the global commerce platform that supercharges your selling. Harness the best converting checkout and same intuitive features, trusted apps, and powerful analytics used by the world's leading brands. Stop leaving sales on the table. Discover why millions trust Shopify to build, grow, and run their business. Sign up today for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/tech23.
Today's episode is brought to you by Self-Pause, which is an AI life coach that I absolutely love. Self-Pause allows you to go and have a conversation around anything that you're trying to achieve. It helps you set goals. It helps you build positive habits, eliminate limiting beliefs. It's essentially just your personal coach for anything that you're trying to focus on in life. The best AI life coach. You need to check them out. Go download the app. This is something that seriously can change your mindset, and I am a massive believer in mindset. I know that if you change your mindset, you can accomplish anything you want to. So go download the Self-Pause app today, iOS and Android. This is something you absolutely need to get. You've been listening to the ChatGPT podcast. Make sure to rate us wherever you listen to your podcasts and have a fantastic week.